Dr. Cinema here. I must have talked about every Marvel Netflix show in all of their individual seasons, except for The Punisher. Making his Netflix debut in season 2 of Daredevil, he quickly became the high point of that season, especially pointing out the parallel he serves with Matt Murdock in that season of his own show. In fact, he became so popular that despite him not being part of the original Marvel Netflix deal when it came to making TV shows, he got his own show, the first season of which came out shortly after the premiere of the miniseries The Defenders. Season 2 came out last month in January of 2019, or at least it's last month at the time of recording this. So I figured it's time that I finally talk about these shows in the best way possible. A TV face-off. That's right, one show going up against itself with its two separate seasons. This is certainly going to be a little interesting. Let's get right into it. Round 1 is actually focused on Billy Russo. Seems weird that I'm focusing on a character that's not the Punisher. In fact, there's not even a round in here that's focused solely on the Punisher, but we'll get to that later. Billy Russo serves as a supporting character / secret secondary villain in the first season, and the final episode of that first season sees Frank Castle and Billy Russo going up against one another. And in the second season, Billy Russo, you could argue that he's the main villain of the second season, but of course he becomes his more famous villain alter ego, Jigsaw. Even though he doesn't actually get called by Jigsaw, a medical doctor in that second season says his mind after the fight with Frank Castle is like a jigsaw because there's just memories all over the place and he's trying hard to connect them all together. So it's really more of like a psychological take on the character. Obviously, a lot of more hardcore Punisher fans were disappointed that despite the fact that his face does have some scars, he still looks better than the average looking guy, which is kind of funny. But that does mean that psychologically speaking, he is more interesting to watch on screen. In the first season, he definitely was a good character, but really throughout most of it, he was just really serviceable. But he had that sort of natural charisma that made him stand out a little bit more, and his close relationship with Frank Castle and the hand he played in when it came to the death of his wife and children. However, the second season sees him really, yes, as a villain, but he doesn't really see himself as the villain due to what happened to his mind, what kind of place he is in his life, that sort of stuff. So while his physical appearance may be a little bit of a disappointment, I'm giving this round to season 2. Now let's move on to season 1, the other villain characters. Now, in season 1, the actual main villain was Rollins, a high-ranking CIA operative who had a hand in playing with the death of Frank Castle's family, as well as doing some other illegal activities he's trying to keep hidden while working for the CIA. With season 2, the villains aren't really that memorable. Like I said, I think Billy Russo was supposed to be like sort of a more secondary villain, but he really became the main villain of season 2. The other villains in season 2, there was this husband and wife that were Christian fundamentalists, sort of, although that part of their characters wasn't really focused on. It was more about their desire to just become powerful people in America. And they also had their foot soldier, John Pilgrim, who is more interesting than those two, but we really don't really get to know that much about him, besides the bare essentials. This character could have really been very interesting and could have had a bigger presence in the show. But for some reason, the Christian husband and wife, as well as John Pilgrim, just really felt like, in a way, filler. I mean, which is, I guess, fine because Billy Russo really did take center stage and became a huge part of this season and show. But still, it was a pretty big letdown. I would even argue it's a bigger letdown than Billy Russo's face in the second season. And plus, Rollins does have a more personal connection with Frank Castle. So I'm giving this round to season 1. Now let's move on to season 2, which does get a little bit more dicey. Oh, I guess, is dicey the right word? I don't care. So, we've got Agent Madani, a Homeland Security agent. We've got Curtis, a friend of Frank Castle and former Navy medic. We've got Karen Page, of course. There's this one NYPD cop whose name I can't remember, but his deal is that he just wants to be a good, clean cop and just bring Frank Castle in, arrest him, and put him on trial. He's not really like an antagonist, but he can serve as a little bit of an obstacle for Frank Castle for a little bit. Then in season 1, we have Micro. I can't remember the character's actual name, but Micro, he worked for the government and he came across these files that were detailing illegal activity that were being kept hidden. And so Rollins tried to find a way to kill Micro, and Micro let them think that he's dead, but he's been in hiding, trying to make sure his family doesn't suffer the same fate that he was supposed to suffer. So he seeks out Frank Castle in season 1 and tries to convince him to help him fight back. In season 2, the new supporting character is Amy, a teenage runaway who's on the run from the Christian husband and wife and John Pilgrim for possessing some pictures that could incriminate their son, who was a New York senator. Now, the actual New York senator's son isn't actually an antagonist, but he does get caught in the middle of this near the end. Amy and Micro, I could go back and forth on them all day. But I think the real focus should be on the ones that appear in both seasons, which is mainly Madani and Curtis. Karen Page does show up in season 2, but it's just really one episode appearance as opposed to her several episode appearance in season 1. So Agent Madani in season 1 was trying to figure out what happened to a former partner, who just so happened to also be with Frank Castle, Billy Russo, and some other Marines that were doing a mission that turned out to be pretty secret and sketchy over in the Middle East. And in season 2, after barely surviving a murder attempt by Billy Russo, does sort of become more involved in the world of Frank Castle and does have a little bit more of a character arc. Curtis, again, plays a little bit more of a character arc and importance in season 2. In season 1, he was there and he did have a role, although it was really more focused on just trying to help Frank Castle with this one plot line that happened to cross over with his, while Curtis played a more direct role in Frank's primary plot line. So with that being said, I'm giving this round to season 2. Round 4. Action. The one thing about the Punisher that sets him apart from other Marvel Netflix shows, Daredevil, Luke Cage, Jessica Jones, and Iron Fist, he doesn't really have any special powers other than the fact that he was trained in the Marine Corps. So there's a lot of gun action in this. And there's a good amount of gun action in both seasons, and it does get pretty intense. And there are a couple moments in season 2 that do seem pretty iconic and kind of awesome looking, especially when it came to the very final scene of that second season. But there just seems to be more iconic action shots in season 1. Plus, season 1 ended with a big fight between Billy Russo and Frank Castle, which just became such an important part in the show in general that it's really hard denying that this really shouldn't take the round. So, this round goes to season 1. Alright, 2-2 tie. Let's move on to the 5th and final round, which is probably actually going to be the hardest. The actual story of both seasons. Now, the actual origin of Frank Castle happened in season 2 of Daredevil. So we really don't get into it that much in season 1. But we get a montage at the very beginning, seeing Frank Castle killing off all the uh, mobster people that played a hand in his family's death. Back in season 2 of Daredevil, he seemingly took care of all the military people that had in Frank's family's death. But after that montage, throughout most of the first episode, he just tries to lay low, but then he gets dragged into it, partly thanks to Micro, and he goes on to take on the last few people that were responsible for the death of his family. For season 2, the story was that after taking down all the people, with the exception of Billy Russo, who's all scarred up and in a hospital, he's just traveling around the Midwest, just traveling around after being secretly, I don't want to say pardoned, but okay, I guess they can say pardoned. But then, thanks to crossing paths with Amy and the people chasing after her, he finds himself once again becoming the vigilante Punisher, even taking her to New York with him and trying to protect her, take down Billy Russo, and all that. Season 1 is a classic revenge story plotline, but at the end of said season, he just seems just as broken as he was at the beginning of that season. Yeah, he took down the people, but you can tell that emotionally it doesn't really help him that much. In season 2, he sees himself that despite the fact that he did what he wanted to do for the most part, he still finds himself in this life with him realizing that there's a part of him that wants to do this. And there's a part of him that actually wants to help this girl, Amy, who serves as a surrogate daughter for his character arc. And in that season 2, actually, there's a line where it says, "Let me be what I'm meant to be." An all-out Punisher. At the very end of said season 2, he fully embraces his vigilante persona. Spray paint skull on his bulletproof vest, dark trench coat, double machine guns, just takes down a whole bunch of criminals. So while season 1 is that classic revenge story that he is most known for, season 2 sees and explores the Frank Castle as the Punisher, trying to figure out if there's a deeper reason for why he does what he does, and if he can actually serve as a sort of, I guess in a way, superhero for other people. And the answer to both those questions are yes, there is something else to his character, which is what season 2 really gets into. So, I'm actually going to give this round, and actually the match, to season 2. So I guess in my opinion, the best season of Netflix show The Punisher is season 2. Although season 1 is just as iconic. That's all I really have to say for this. So comment down below your thoughts on The Punisher. Like, subscribe, share. And yeah, I guess just see you guys next time.